All right. Let's bring macro analyst up on the speaker board. So if YouTube Live can't hear me, please post the comments. All right. Looks like it's pretty good. All right. Let's get started. So on the right, you can see the space on YouTube Live. Um, we have a request to speak already. All right. And then in the middle, you can see my profile where I posted uh, the the um, what we're going to talk about today. Some of the news that I saw were relevant. All right. Let's start with the markets. Tesla is down 6.66%. Ominous. $189 per share. Market cap $592 billion. Brandon says he can hear me. Great. Um, overall markets. Markets just turned green. Nasdaq slightly up. And S&P 500 slightly up. Dow Jones break even. Oil price are down 1.4% to $79 per share. Per barrel. The yield curve is up a few basis points today. 10-year Treasury yield is at 4.22. Apple down 2.3%. Google down 2.9%. Oil stocks are down. Nvidia is up 6.4%. Nvidia is now a $2.2 trillion company with a 73 PE ratio. There's also a smaller cap company that is surging, Super Micro Computer. Just got news that they're going to be added to S&P 500. Market cap of 63. It's up about 10x in the last year. This year alone, the stock is up 4 times. So these are obviously signs of a bubble, but it's nowhere near the type of bubble that we saw in 1999. Back then, it was only companies that making some revenue, some of them not even making revenue, definitely no profits. Whereas Nvidia obviously is generating a substantial amount of profits, and many are convinced that Nvidia is going to generate tens of billions of dollars over the next few years. So it's not the same situation. But Omar, how are you?
Hey, doing great. Really enjoying the Cybertruck.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Well, it's a truck and it's a Tesla. You can have a ton of utility, haul a ton of stuff around, tow things. It still gets the same great range as any other Tesla, still compatible with the supercharger networks, your home charger, and it's basically the best Tesla they've made. It's the smoothest, it's the most comfortable, and it's got a great sound system. Basically, it's just the flagship of their lineup. It's the best vehicle they make.
Is there anything that surprised you about Cybertruck ownership? That we've obviously covered the company and the products every single day here, and you're here every single day as well. Is there anything that kind of surprised you from about the product?
Honestly, just people's reactions to seeing it, how people see it, they want to buy it, they want to ask questions about it. People are constantly, coming up to you. I mean, I kind of expected this to happen, but it really is just everywhere you go. And I think this is going to do a lot to raise awareness of EVs and get people asking questions about EVs and just look at EVs in a different way. Also, just the comfort. I thought maybe I didn't necessarily think it would be that much smoother than, say, a Model S, but the high ride height combined with the large tires and um, the new technology they've put in there, the new air suspension, the steer by wire, the rear wheel steering, it really is just a vehicle that is so comfortable to ride in, the best sort of road trip vehicle, even though it doesn't have autopilot yet, just in terms of the ride comfort. You're in this huge vehicle, the bumps in the road really feel like nothing compared to other Tesla vehicles. And you really just are riding on a cloud. It's the best driving comfort that I've seen in any Tesla, so it's really cool to experience that in person. And the steer by wire, it removes a lot of the harsh feeling from the steering. It just makes it so easy to maneuver around. You have a vehicle that's so much larger and has so much more utility. You can fit all this stuff in there, basically put anything in it, do anything, do things you never could have dreamed of in another Tesla, and yet you don't have to really make many compromises in terms of how it is to drive that vehicle around. Yeah, it's a massive vehicle, obviously, which, is more difficult to park and things like that. But in some ways, it's actually easier to maneuver around than my Model S. The steer by wire, the rear wheel steering, and the front bumper camera. That was all actually one thing that I was really surprised at how much I liked the front bumper camera because, I thought front bumper camera, I was thinking about it kind of in the context of FSD or 3D Park Assist, but it's just really useful to use by itself, even without any of those, AI features or anything. It's just really useful to be able to look through that front bumper camera, especially with the Cybertruck, where it's kind of harder to know what the dimensions are. And yeah, it's really handy, and it should improve FSD and 3D Park Assist as well. That seems pretty clear based on just looking at what's coming out of that camera.
That's great. Thank you for all that feedback. All right, we have X Spaces going on and YouTube Live going on at the same time. People seem pleased with the audio quality at YouTube Live finally. I think we have a good setup now. We just got some feedback from Omar on his new Cybertruck ownership. Omar, what do you think about? Let's start with the stock price. What do you think about the stock price today? What's going on?
Well, I don't really care. I mean, I bought some more shares today. It's kind of like, you buy a house, right? When you buy a business, so that's really what you're doing. You're buying a piece of a business. Now, someone can come to you and give you an offer and say, "Hey, I want to buy this business from you for this amount," but it doesn't actually change the intrinsic value of the house you own or the business you own. So I look at Tesla and I say, okay, is the business worth 8% less today? than it was on Friday? And the answer is no. I think it's actually getting more valuable. They're ramping up Cybertruck. They're deploying FSD 12. Are there some hiccups there? Yes. Hiccups ramping Cybertruck, sure. Hiccups deploying FSD 12, sure. But I think the company is on a really good path. Now, a lot of people are looking at the Q1 numbers and they're saying this may not be a very strong quarter. We may see a sequential decline from Q4. There's some uncertainty around that. There's a very competitive environment in China. I think someone had a story that, oh, Tesla sales are down a lot in China. Some people pointed out that there was a Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year period. But, Q1 maybe isn't looking too hot. But I still expect them to sell probably over 400,000 vehicles easily. And who knows, maybe they can surprise us. But even if Q1 production and deliveries are a little bit weaker, does that really change my overall thesis? Not really. I think overall, it's still going to be strong growth compared to the year ago quarter.
I was texting with someone last night who, at least at the peak, they owned a lot of Tesla stock. They're just a normal retail shareholder. At the peak, their Tesla was worth about 110 million. And they were texting me last night and they're like, I'm sick of this stock price. It's just been flat forever. It's been like no growth for years. And Nvidia is just sucking all the air out the room. And they just don't see short term how the price can go up. And I basically just told them everything that we invested into Tesla for is still happening and going to happen, just later than maybe we thought it would. It's going to be a bit of a wait, but I think 2025 is when the next gen, vehicle comes out. Second Megapack factory will be ramping. Cybertruck will likely be ramped by then. Semi starts mass production. FSD will be really good. Who knows if they'll take the beta label off by then. Energy will start to be really profitable. The growth is already good right there. So I think we're just in a waiting period, right, for things to play out. And it is going to be a bit of a wait. But if you can hang in there, I bet long-term shareholders will be rewarded. Not financial advice, of course, but that's what I'm going to do.
All right. We have X Spaces going on here, YouTube Live going on. Sound quality on YouTube Live seems perfect. Thank you to those in the comments section letting me know. We also have James Doma in the audience. If he wants to come up and talk about V12, I know he has a recent post that I didn't get a chance to read just yet, but we have Omar here as well. If they want to talk about V12, more than welcome to request to speak. We have Bradford as well. He's welcome to come up if you would like to. Let me just kind of read this Tesla China shipments while Bradford comes up. Tesla China shipments plunged to lowest in more than a year, as Omar mentioned earlier. Tesla shipments from its factory in Shanghai slumped to the lowest in more than a year amid a Lunar New Year holiday sales lull and renewed price competition in the world's biggest EV market. The US automaker shipped 60,365 vehicles from its China factory in February, according to preliminary data released on Monday by China's Passenger Car Association, the lowest such figure since December 2022 and down almost 16% month over month. Year over year, it was a wider 19% increase. Now, as I read these things from now on, you'll be able to see it on YouTube Live. I'll put them up there on YouTube Live as I read some of these posts. Bradford, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I would like to start with a question for Sawyer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm driving from Sacramento to New York City and back on FSD V12. What state are you in, and do you want to check it out in your neighborhood?
I'm currently in New Hampshire, so I don't know if you'll be up in my neck of the woods.
New Hampshire is a little far, but we'll see what kind of time we make between now and New York City, so maybe we'd be able to do a detour. I've been to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Love it there.
Yeah, let me know. Just DM me if you're close.
So I spent a little time with James Dalma, and we got a little video made. Got a few different videos made, and showing him V12 and his like the issues he has around his area where V12 struggles with, V11 struggles with. He, he's seen like a really big improvement on multiple fronts, and we'll show his reaction in the video. I'm impressed by just how confident it is, and there's much less hesitation. There's much less confusion. Driving on V12 is really nice. It's really smooth. We thought like spinning around in downtown Sacramento, we'd start to get nauseous or something like that, and we got done with 10-15 minutes, and like it was totally fine. It was smooth.
That's great. Bradford, let me ask you a question. Do you think V12 is going to lead to an increase in take rates?
If word gets out there, I would say yes. They do have some things to fix, like around parking and things like that, but like I think it's really good. And I have a friend in here with me. Do you want to comment on what your thoughts are?
I think all I would say is I keep saying this over and over, it's very confident, and when it makes a decision, it goes for it, and it's a good, safe decision. Whereas on V11, in city streets, I'm sure we've all experienced it, where you get like a juddery steering wheel or juddery acceleration, deceleration. It's like the car feels insecure. Like, I'm not sure I'm supposed to go. And in V12, it's starkly different in that it's like, yep, I'm going, and it just does it.
We've had no safety critical interventions. There's one time the car maybe could have made it, but I'm an aggressive left turner and I wouldn't have done it. So we've traveled a lot of miles already and about to get to Barstow, California.
Great. All right, we have Meta on the board as well. And I pulled up on the screen for YouTube Live Telescope's post. Telescope had a reporting, I believe this was yesterday, and I would like Meta's thoughts on this. I'll pin this up here as well. Meta, have you seen this post by Telescope?
Are you referring? I think I just saw it briefly. I need to internalize it a little bit more before I respond.
Okay.
You're talking about the one with the release timelines and the small accident?
Right. Tesla avoids keeping any vehicles enrolled in Wave 1, Tesla's early access program, on a version for over 2 weeks. Prolonging this testing period defeats the program's purpose to try out and provide feedback on new features before they're released to customers. This is why each of the last 4 FSD updates has been around this 2 weeks apart, 5 or take a few days. When this period is longer than average, it is typically due to something critical that requires additional testing, and in the case of V12, model training. Last week, V12.2.1's deployment was initially paused due to issues reported with the auto speed modulation, causing unintended and uncomfortable maneuvers. While no safety critical issues had occurred yet, this had the potential of causing minor incidents, such as being rear-ended, so the update was pulled. Despite this, the internal deployment goal for the next iteration was set to March 1st, which would have been 11 to 12 days later on schedule with prior releases. In recent events, unfortunately, a specific incident, crash, that occurred a little under a week after the initial deployment of V12.2.1 required a full internal investigation the following day. Nobody was injured, and the vehicle experienced minor cosmetic damage. We were made aware this morning that this is the reason for the missed deployment dates. Meta, what are your thoughts on this? And now Omar, and if James wants to come up, he's welcome to.
This is not alarming, just for folks who are not in software development practices. This is pretty common. So you usually have a target release frequency. I think we were hypothesizing it would be weekly. Bi-weekly seems like what they're targeting right now. That tells you maybe something about their training time as well. After that, you can also look at it and say, what is the percentage of releases that actually make it out? That would be the thing you actually target. So if 100% of your releases are making it out as planned, you're far too conservative in your release rate. So there's different companies will have different targets. 50% might be too low. 70 to 80% is usually considered roughly the right number, because that means you're pushing just fast enough that every now and then things are breaking, but not so fast that shitty stuff is getting out into production, or not so slow that you're testing the hell out of everything and you could have really released it much earlier, and that delay compounds over time. So
Okay,
nothing
Omar
to shake
and
your
then Bradford.
Yeah, I mean, I take everything on the internet with a grain of salt. And Tyler from Tesla Scope, he's got some great info since he runs a service where they can see all the updates coming through and stuff like that. But even somebody I trust, I kind of take it with a grain of salt. So, I mean, we didn't have any indication that 12.3 was even supposed to roll out over the weekend except from Tesla Scope, right? So Elon didn't say it, Tesla didn't say it. Maybe it was the internal goal or something, but that was never really communicated. So they tweeted, okay, we're going to see a rollout this weekend. Rollout didn't happen. That can be a number of reasons. But you could even be talking to a real guy who's a Tesla employee who actually knows that the rollout is going to happen and it doesn't end up happening. Right. So, I mean, it seems like they're kind of trying to, you know, like I can kind of imagine the conversation between Tyler and whoever's giving him this information like, oh, there's a rollout that's happening. Oh, why didn't it happen? Oh, well, I need to explain it. This is why it didn't happen. And like some guy posted that video of the car in the parking lot and it's trying to park and then someone opens their door and then it kind of moves to the right a little bit and it just bumps into the car. So, I mean, is this the reason it didn't roll out? I mean, I don't know, maybe not. Every crash that happens is investigated. They look at every single crash that happens. So, if this is like some minor incident, it's not surprising me at all that they're investigating it. And it's not unusual at all for there to be minor fender benders in cases where there's, a human who didn't take over for whatever reason. So I don't really know what to make of this. It may be true. It may not be true. I don't think that there's anything unusual going on here. This is just the nature of FSD beta updates. The rollout can be kind of unpredictable. If it's ready to go out, it's ready to go out. If it's not ready, it's not ready. And there's nothing you can really do to make it ready. So I think that FSD 12.3 is probably going to roll out very soon. I wouldn't be surprised to see it roll out this week or over the weekend. And I don't think we really need to worry too much about the internal details of what's going on or, why it's not rolling out, because there's no way to really know for sure. It's all kind of just speculation, really.
Meta.
I
Sorry,
would
hold
also
on a second. Bradford, did you have something to say?
Yeah, the account that shared that incident that happened in the parking lot, they also had a video where they were complaining about like how many strikes they got on the beta, and generally like the only way to get strikes, unless there's like some kind of bug in the system, is like you're on your phone while you're driving. That's how you get strikes. That's how you get red hands on the wheel, like the easiest. So I found the whole situation, disappointing that
All
they
right,
would like
Meta.
even Tesla.
Yeah, I would just underscore what Omar said is exactly right about not overreading into the whys. A way to think about this is the purpose of the release to wave one is to get enough work from the fleet of cars so that the next cycle of development is kind of like filled up with work for people to work on. If you catch enough work early, there's no point in releasing it. You're not releasing it as if like this is a perk you're releasing to your customers. You're releasing it to gather more data and to collect what to work on. As long as you know the high priority stuff to work on, that's all you really need. So I don't think we need to worry too much about that. While faster releases is a positive sign, slower release is not necessarily a negative sign, as long as the development is actually occurring.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
great.
really talking about the biggest FSD update ever here. 12.3. My understanding is this is going to go wide to everybody, right? So not just a quarter of a percent. We're talking, a plurality, a majority of the fleet moving to this version potentially. That's the goal. Of course, given that it's validated and everything looks good. So it's not going to roll out to everybody, this major new release, unless it's really rock solid. And you're seeing from the people who do have it, they're saying, wow, this is incredible. It's got incredible new capabilities. I'm sure you're seeing many of the videos on your timeline. And that's great. I think everyone's going to be blown away with it. They're also pointing out some minor issues that I think are going to be fixed. So they really want to make sure this one's rock solid. But I guarantee you that this month we will see 12.3 roll out and roll out very widely. And it's going to be an awesome moment, honestly. So, yeah, I guess we just need to be a little more patient. They're almost here. And hopefully we'll get some news this week.
Bradford.
Yeah, I want to take the role of the bull for a moment. What we've witnessed so far in V12, and it hasn't been 24 hours of driving, but probably like 12 or so. V12, it fixes a lot of issues. We are incredibly impressed by it. It doesn't do everything perfectly. It doesn't always park in the way you want, but it's very useful right now. It is a extremely useful tool. I do think this should increase take rate, provided like people find out or figure out like how good it is.
Just a quick reminder to those who are requesting to speak. I may not be able to accept it right away, but if you are, please be patient. We'll eventually come around to you. Omar, go ahead.
So Bradford says, provided people find out, the take rate should increase. The good thing about FSD is, unlike selling a new Tesla where you kind of have to put out an ad on Google or YouTube, we have a very easy way to reach many of the people who could buy this. You just send them a free trial. And boom, okay, you just have it now. And well, now they know about it and they know how good it is. So it can also be a selling point for new Teslas. Hey, buy a Tesla because it has this feature. I think it's actually becoming one of their key differentiators. But we only have about 500,000 FSD packages sold out of 6 million Teslas. So there's a tremendous growth opportunity in just the existing fleet, which we know how to contact because we have their contact information.
All right. Let's switch gears unless anybody else has anything to say on the matter. Actually, I have Dave Wolf on here. Dave, did you have something to add here?
Yeah. So, hey, this is for Bradford. Would love to see you guys here in Colorado. So, I don't know if you're coming this way through Denver or going through it on 80, but would be happy to meet you someplace along the way. I'd love to see 12, and in fact, take it through some paces in Denver that give 11 challenges.
Cool. Yeah, definitely want to go through Denver on the way back. So we're going to go more further north. We're going to hit Indianapolis on the way to New York City, and then on the way back we'll trail the northern side of Ohio, come through Chicago, then come across down through Denver, and we'll see from there. Yeah.
All right. If you're on the path Bradford just described and you'd like to try V12, you can reach out to Bradford. Let's switch gears to Tesla Energy. So we have Giga Shanghai. starting production, starting the building construction of the energy factory, as I understand it. I pinned the tweet at the top of your screens. Sawyer, do you have the latest on this?
We got some potentially new footage over the weekend from UA or at Ben TV's is that. That suggested maybe construction has started. Doesn't look like much has really happened. It just looks like a muddy field if that is indeed the location. So, but the Chinese, they build things really quickly. They ramp things really quickly. So we can still expect production to probably start this year.
Bradford, I know you follow Tesla Energy and especially the Lathrop factory pretty closely. Do you have any thoughts on this latest news?
I was just at Lathrop yesterday. I saw the picture for Mega Factory Shanghai. That looks like a Tesla site. They like to cut the corners off their sites with the diagonal. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's related. When I was at Lathrop, we saw a little bit increased activity. They finally poured the rest of the ramp behind the second door, or that comes out from the second door of the factory. So with one door at Lathrop, they had 3 heavy-duty conveyors that take mega packs to that door, and then the second door they got 3 more conveyors. We noticed when we were there, because we stopped by on the way from Sacramento, it seemed like 4 of the red straddle loaders were in use, and they were loading 4 trailers at the same time. So like it used to be they could only load like 2 of them at the time, and they would get backed up out the street. So things seem to be moving in a good direction, and they're giving themselves increased capacity.
Thank you, Bradford. And we have Larry Goldberg on the speaker board as well. Larry, you recently wrote an article on Tesla Energy, correct?
That's right, Yaman. I published one yesterday, and I had a couple of interviews about that particular article. I mean, what I found most interesting about that article, about that research that I did for that article, is just how much revenue reserve is being built up in Tesla Energy, quite significant revenue reserve that is going to be recognized in the coming years. And if this is a pattern, it means that the profitability of this business as it scales is going to be quite awe-inspiring. I mean, it's going to far exceed the profitability of the auto business in terms of margin. And actually, if you look at Tesla's actual stated target in terms of actual number of gigawatts they want, terawatts they want to produce, then the business is going to be significantly larger than the auto business, and more importantly, is going to be significantly more profitable. So it's pretty exciting to see. Hopefully these numbers get borne out, but I'm pretty excited about it.
Great, and I pinned Larry's article at the top of our screens. Larry, what do you make of this today's stock price drop?
I'm sorry, I missed that. Make of what?
Today's stock price drop.
Oh, stock price. I don't, Yemen, I don't follow the stock price from day to day, so I'm the wrong guy to ask. As you know, I'm really in the longer term.
Yeah. Bradford, let's switch to NVIDIA for a second while we're on the stock price. Are you an investor in NVIDIA or any related silicon companies? Bradford, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. My comments on NVIDIA.
Right. What do you make of this stock price increase continuing further up now, about closer to 80 PE? There are other semiconductor companies that are kind of surging.
Yeah, so we had news on Friday that Supermicro was joining the S&P 500. I'm curious how much that ended up today. I've been on the road all day and haven't had a chance to check that out yet. So I'm guessing like NVIDIA and others went up in sympathy. I still think NVIDIA is undervalued, but I worry a bit that sentiment is becoming just euphoric in the chip stocks right now.
SMCI is up 23% today, as Bradford mentioned on the news, that it's going to be joined to S&P 500. Meta, are you happy you didn't short NVIDIA just yet? Is that devil's advocate playing out for you?
I mean, full disclosure, like I have indirect exposure to NVIDIA, as I've said in the past through ETFs and stuff, right? But I have not shorted it. There's a big difference in me believing it won't have a long runway in a year from now and me actually trying to short it.
Hey, were you able to send that paper around that you thought, indicated maybe the need for compute isn't going to grow as fast in the coming years?
Yeah, I sent it right after the meeting, or right after our spaces in the speakers chat.
Okay, we should have a dedicated AI paper hour once a week or so, and
Okay,
maybe we
I'm open
can,
to that.
yeah,
For
we
what
can
it's worth,
discuss them.
for what it's worth,
Go ahead.
James Dama recently also put up a post that he was talking about different things he's seeing from V12. And in that post, you'll notice he says something to the effect of, like, he's talking about hardware 3 versus 4. And he made the same exact argument that in 1 year, we've seen a 10x improvement in compute on inference. So he's referencing the same papers. So if you're seeing a 10x reduction in compute needs on inference, the same thing is going to happen on the server models. So all the data center needs are dropping by 10x yearly. Now, does that continue? Not necessarily, but there are lots of papers showing lots of promise, and there's at least 3 different techniques I can think of off the top of my head that are in a similar vein of like experimentation and high promise and just very early in their stages of development. So yeah, if we continue to see like even close to 10x reductions yearly, what does that have as an impact on the chip need?
That's right. Good points. Thank you. Let's switch back to Tesla. Omar, this question's for you. Right now, Tesla's offering a series of incentives up to $5,500 off for demo vehicles, a couple $1,000s off on new inventory. The other day, we had somebody in the space mention that 80 to 90% of sales are coming from the new inventory page. I pinned at the top of our screens a list of incentives that Tesla's offering at this time. 3 months of free full self-driving, 5,000 free supercharger miles, favorable leasing deals, some low interest financing, insurance discounts in China, paint discounts in China. I guess the question is, Omar, what do you think this means for margins in Q1? Do you expect further incentives later this month? And then same question for Larry and Bradford.
Yeah, it's typical of Tesla to offer incentives in the last month of the quarter, especially so that people take delivery before the quarter ends. I think it's difficult to project exactly where margins fall. It's easy to see how there could be a sequential decline. But you also have COGS dropping quite rapidly too. You have a deflationary situation in China. So where the price cuts fall with respect to the COGS declines, I think is kind of unclear. But yeah, it's definitely not an environment where EV makers have a lot of pricing power right now.
We just saw today that Nissan dropped their Aria EV prices by $6,000, and now it starts at 39 something. It's hitting everybody.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think BYD lowered prices too, right, Sawyer, on their new SUV?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Larry, what do you think about these record incentives, record low prices? What do you think it's going to do to Q1 deliveries, Q2 deliveries, and margins?
One of the things that we don't pay attention to is the dealership inventory and sales situations for ICE vehicles. And the reason I'm raising that issue, is because, we look at EV sales via Tesla sales, and we think that's the universe we operate in. But we operate in an economic environment. And right now, if you look at the retail sales for the ICE vehicles, all vehicles, through dealerships, the dealerships are suffering very badly. Inventory is up dramatically. Prices are down dramatically. Incentives are raised dramatically. So what you're seeing is it's this shock and the wave of shocks that are coming from the whole pandemic and the emergence from the pandemic, the whole backlog of supply chain and the repair of the supply chain. But this is a pretty serious shock. I predicted some time ago that we're going to see one of the real great crises in the auto industry this year, and I think we're in the midst of that. And I think that it reflects back to the EV world. I think what we're seeing in the EV world is a more direct analog of what we're seeing in the in the dealership space. So we're finally feeling the impact of interest rates, of these high interest rates on retail auto sales, and of these high prices for autos. So I think that we are going to see a decline in volumes generally through the year, both in the ICE world and the EV world. I think we're going to see a decline in margins, both in the ICE world and the EV world. I'm not sure which will be worse, but it's going to play one against the other. And I think the winner of all of this ends up being, of course, Tesla, because they have got by far the largest margin to play with, far greater than any of the other EV makers, certainly dramatically greater than BYD has, whose margins are minuscule to vanishing, and of course far greater than most of the ICE makers. So it's going to be a very difficult period, a tough period for every single automaker. And those with large cash balances who are not giving money back to their shareholders will be the winners. And, I saw where the calls this morning, very interesting calls this morning, for Tesla to raise money by issuing stock. I don't think it's possible given the situation with Elon Musk and his shareholding right now. But that's where I would have voted, and that's where I did vote a little bit earlier, actually mid of last year. Anyway, that's my view. It doesn't accord well with a lot of people, but that's how I think it's going to play.
Thank you, Larry. Meta, did you have any comments on the topic?
No.
Okay. We have a question from YouTube live chat coming from Steven. Steven asks, any comments on Toyota's CEO saying their customers want hybrids? Any comments on the hybrids? Toyota announced results as well for February. I believe their sales jumped double digits year over year, as well as Honda. Toyota seems very positive on demand for hybrids. Meta?
I think it's all relative. People probably want hybrids over over ICE vehicles, but that doesn't mean that they want hybrids over EVs.
All right. Omar, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so I think just thinking broadly about the auto market, we're obviously emerging from a pandemic era inflationary period where there was a shortage of autos. Nobody could make cars. There were a lot of supply chain issues, chip shortage, etc. That drove the price of new cars very high. many models that were low cost models, your $15,000 sedan, your $20,000 sedan, those were cut first. As a result, average selling prices got pushed much higher. And a lot of buyers simply were pushed out of the new car market. They simply cannot afford a new car anymore at these new price levels. Now, you have the supply returning to the market in the United States, cars starting to come back to the market. And you've got a situation in China where there was essentially a property bubble that collapsed that started to cause a deflationary spiral. And you have a lot of Chinese companies, Chinese EV companies that were started during these boom times. Evergrande got into EVs before they got liquidated, right? The company that really started this whole property bubble, they were in EVs too. So you've got like more than 90 different EV brands in China. Okay. And of some of them don't even have like a third of more than a third of them don't have sales of more than 250 a month. So you've got all these EV brands that essentially nobody's buying. And it set off really this deflationary spiral where there's all these junk EVs. Some of them are like more like bikes than cars. They don't have fast charging. They're of varying quality. So there's just this sort of desperate attempt to sell them to somebody, make a deal, sell them to some city or something like that. And this has created a really, competitive environment where there's a lot of really cheap electric vehicles to get that people just have their hands full. And here in the US too, you have the highest inventory levels in 3 years. So what I think is going to happen next is the environment will get tough and more tough until eventually many of these players die. Many of these Chinese EV brands that have no sales will die, maybe merge into other businesses, consolidation, that type of thing. And you'll also see probably some Western automakers have some trouble at this time where they have these really expensive vehicles. Here comes the cheap sub $20,000 Chinese EV, bringing that affordable new car to the market that the world is so desperately craving, but that the automakers can't deal with because they've had to deal with all these inflationary cost pressures and even internalize some of them, right? Because then the union comes to you and says, hey, you're making so much profit, we want to raise. And now that cost structure actually gets sort of ingrained in the company. So eventually you're going to have to see, I think, a constriction of supply to return the market to more normalcy. And that'll probably come just because this environment is really tough to compete in. And then you'll probably see things start to normalize and see less of this sort of spiral in new and used car prices.
Great. Any questions or comments? Please request to speak. Any questions for the speaker board? You're welcome to request to speak. Edward, go ahead.
Versus Tesla. It seems to me that now BYD margins are much better than in the past. And also, I just wanted to point out a very rough number that might be useful, because everybody says correctly that Tesla in the past had a huge R&D advantage, because Elon made a miracle in 2019, 2018 in setting up the company with very low budget. But now, if you look at the R&D budget of Tesla, we have 4 billion that have to be split into new batteries, new GPUs like Dojo, robots, software, Cybertruck. So Tesla has a very low budget in terms of R&D, in terms of sales, and in terms of absolute number. BYD has 90,000 researchers and engineers. Tesla has 130,000 employees in total. So they manufacture their own batteries, they manufacture their own tires, they manufacture their own brakes. I mean, it's starting to be hard to understand how, with this vertical integration, anyone can compete with them.
Right.
And also,
okay. Let's get some comments on what you said. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting conversation. I mean, I will just point out that the margin that BYD earns, the gross margin may look good, but if you look at the overhead, if you look at the company's corporate overhead, it is staggeringly large, and that's why their actual bottom line profit margin is so limited. It's true they're very well integrated. This is probably a very significant advantage. And it's also true that they are extremely good in research and development. But to point to Tesla's R&D economics and call that a disadvantage is quite laughable when you consider that Tesla led the entire auto industry in terms of castings, in every major discovery, every major advance, it has been Tesla that has led. Now, on the other hand, in battery supply, it's clear that some of the Chinese battery suppliers have done extremely well. Not necessarily BYD, interestingly enough, but nonetheless, it'd be interesting to see the progress that Tesla makes with its very, very sparse investment in R&D in terms of its batteries. But I will say finally, 90,000 researchers in R&D does not impress me. It impresses me even less than the 5,000 software engineers that worked for Volkswagen and cost Volkswagen billions of dollars of wasted money. More is not better in R&D. R&D is better in R&D. And Tesla's constant improvements in their technology is really a pointer to that. So bottom line, BYD is a fearsome competitor, a very good competitor. I think it helps evolve the marketplace. But there's no doubt that both Tesla and BYD, while they are competitive with one another, they're also quite cooperative with one another. So I think that it's not a winner that will emerge from it. I think they will both win from this particular race. I think Tesla have got some significant value add in terms of its approach to R&D. I think BYD has got some significant value add in terms of being embedded in the Chinese system. But I think both are going to contribute significantly to the marketplace and continue to contribute significantly to the marketplace. A great test, I just want to end on one thought, Yaman. A great test is going to be the release of next gen and the evolution of the production methods of next gen. And I know that BYD are studying it very closely and looking to emulate it. So I'll leave it on that note.
Thank you, Larry. We're going to get a couple more comments on BYD, and then we're going to switch topics to Optimus because I have questions for Larry. Edward, as a reminder, you have to stay on mute and raise your hand. We have other people on the speaker board and we need to get to. Please put yourself on mute.
Okay.
Thank you. Bradford?
Tesla is down, what, 8% on fake news. The Chinese New Year fell more fully in February this year, and people are pointing to that as like some big issue for Tesla, and it's not. So I'm curious to see if like that was it driving people's behavior today, or if there's some kind of new seller of the stock. That's what's on my mind. It's just a little strange.
All right, Grant and then Edward.
Hey, I want to get back to BYD, but first on the Tesla thing, a question to the group is, I think there was a partial factory shutdown in China last February. So even adjusting for the Chinese New Year, I'm not sure if the numbers are as good as, we might want them to be. Going back to BYD though, I feel like this is a thing that I hear a lot from Tesla bulls around. Oh, it's the quality of the R&D that matters, and I definitely understand that to a point. But at a point, it's definitely also worth considering just how much money someone's spending on R&D. I hear the people who think that Tesla has pound for pound the best R&D team that exists in the world and all of that, but I kind of don't really know how to size that up. I was looking at a Wall Street Journal article today that just looked at the number of new models that were coming out from BYD and Tesla and a couple other automakers over the last, I don't know, 7-8 years. And it's just, BYD is doing 4 times as much. It was EVs specifically, not, the broader offerings within BYD. And I think it's going to be super difficult to compete with BYD. There was a word used that was laughable in relation to BYD. And I think it's in my mind makes me think of all of the giant competitors that have fallen because they're laughing at a smaller, more nimble startup that's going to eat their lunch. I feel like, just final thought, if you look at the actual tech that exists in BYD and Tesla today, maybe setting aside the robot and stuff like that, it feels like BYD is in a stronger position overall. So would be curious to get people's takes.
All right. We have a good balance of bulls and bears. I think a lot of people are investors here, but maybe varying levels of bullishness. So let's get Omar in the mix to kind of bring it all together. Omar?
Well, BYD is not a younger, more nimble startup. BYD was founded in 1995, 8 years before Tesla. And they actually started as a battery maker. They were making batteries for cell phones. So that has actually been a really great sort of background to have making EVs. Their level of vertical integration is definitely unmatched. But, of course, when you're talking about R&D, what you want to count is not the dollars going in. What you want to count is the value coming out. So, if I just spend a bunch of money on hiring people who do nothing, that's not going to generate much value for the company. So I think that's the important thing. Value the output rather than just look at the dollars going in and saying, okay, this company that's more capital efficient is not investing enough. Then, in terms of BYD, them making tires, that kind of thing, that's great. I think BYD is a great company. It's an incredible growth story. They're now starting to export. They're a supplier to Tesla. Tesla's using their batteries in the Berlin factory for the standard range Model 3, which I think is great. They've become one of the largest battery makers in the world. But there's a reason why the market gives BYD a value of 72 billion and Tesla 600 billion. It's because the future growth driver, the future earnings growth driver is not going to be tires. It's going to be robots and intelligence. So from that perspective, you could even really look at companies like Figure and OpenAI and say they're more directly competitive than BYD is right now. I mean, BYD is a partner in many ways.
If I can just answer very quickly.
Okay, Edward, and then Bradford, and then Grant.
Yes, I will be very quick. So BYD has factories in Brazil and is planning new factories in Mexico, Brazil, Indonesia, and other places as well, maybe India. So planning for real, not announcements and then everything disappears. New factories. And the other thing about the quality of research, I agree with everyone saying that the number of researchers doesn't say anything. The money doesn't say anything. But at least the focus has to matter somehow. Because I said it, Elon was amazing in 2018 with a few hundred millions developing what is Tesla today. It was a miracle. He, living in the factory, made it. But this was because the efforts were for battery electric vehicles. Now you have 3 billions, and I just posted the chart out there comparing Tesla expenses with the Nasdaq that have to split with 6-7 different divisions to develop a new GPU like Dojo. It's not enough 1 billion. Indeed, the head of Dojo left in October with other 2 executives from the team. You don't leave a company if what you're doing is successful. And Nvidia has 10 billions that are just for that. And then you have Optimus that, of course, it's promising. Maybe it's very, I don't know, 3 billions out of 600 billions market cap, but still, you would need several hundreds of millions of dollars. And last one, everyone mentioned the AI. I was stupid last year in not understanding the correlation between Tesla and AI. Of course, it had to go up in June and July for that. So it was very, very easy. But now we are seeing that AI, even for Google, is not enough. So large cap are spending billions just to have the capacity to be able to compete in the sector. And so if you want to compete with Meta, you have to spend 10 billions per year.
All
Can
right,
Tesla
Bradford
afford to spend 10 billions? I don't know. So
okay, Bradford and then Grant. Edward, if you continue to speak out of turn, I will have to move you down to listener. Bradford and then Grant.
The problem with BYD for me is they have 40 different models. They got 20 different models of EVs. They have 20 different models of hybrids. Then they spread whatever research dollars over all those models. They're not left with much else to do R&D beyond that on, except for just developing the engineering for the cars. I'm glad that BYD is scaling, but they need to add more automation. A lot of their factories are like very heavy on labor, outsized impact of labor. That's what I think about and concerned about. I'm also not convinced yet that BYD makes money on the BEVs alone. So the hybrids are the hybrids more than 100% of profits? You know, that's what I'm unclear on as well.
All right, Grant, and then we'll check in with Larry if he has a comment on the topic on BYD. Otherwise, we'll switch to Optimus. Grant, go ahead.
I mean, just final thoughts on BYD. I feel like I'm just not hearing the reason that they lose on some level. I mean, I think that they announced a couple months ago that they're hiring 4,000 engineers dedicated to autonomy. And I hear the comment around, oh, if you hire an engineer and they just sit around, is that worth anything? Engineers in China don't just sit around. Like, that's really not a thing from what I understand and from what I've seen. One final comment around the relative valuations of BYD and Tesla. I don't think that that's necessarily something that you can lean on as a support for the idea that Tesla's objectively a better business. I think that my personal view is that Tesla stock began to skyrocket in March 2020 when everyone downloaded Robinhood. I think it's a retail phenomenon. BYD on the flip side is a Chinese stock, which is very much out of favor with Wall Street types at this point. There's geopolitical risk bound up in that stock that doesn't exist elsewhere. So I would just be careful about saying that this one's valued at more than the other. As a result, it's safe to say that this one's better. I just don't agree.
Okay. Thank you, Grant. Bradford, did you have something to say?
I lost it in there. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. Bradford, I can get your thoughts on Optimus. So recently there were some investments made into Figure. We talked about this on Friday a little bit. Elon responded on March 1st with my time, Texas time, 12:25 a.m. Bring it on. I pinned it at the top of your screens. The screenshot. I replied to Brett Adcock, who recently raised $675 million at $2.6 billion valuation for Figure. The investors include OpenAI, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Jeff Bezos, Intel, and Parkway, and a bunch of other venture capital firms. Bradford, what do you make of this development?
From a lens of a Tesla investor, I think more about, I do think it adds some competition for Optimus. Tesla, I think, is going to be able to manufacture them much more quickly and at greater scale. Elon is probably one of the best manufacturers in the world. Not probably, he is. What they're manufacturing for SpaceX, what they're manufacturing at Tesla under their vertical integration. So if Tesla has that huge manufacturing advantage, if they get to a scale that's like 10x the nearest competitor, even if some of these other things that maybe are easier than we thought they were, maybe they are, the scale that Tesla achieves, I would, in my mind, I still put them in the driver's seat. But like all these announcements do give me pause as a Tesla investor. Is there a risk that a significant portion of that potential Optimus profits could get eaten away? And we value Optimus by itself today. We might push back the valuation by some percentage, but at $3,400 a share, and like even if their profits get eaten into, it's still a lot of profit potential in the future. It's not financial advice. That's just our
So
numbers.
just to make sure, $3,400 per share is just Optimus present value.
Yeah, present value, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they sell it or lease it. If they sell it, at one price, they'll base the lease off of that sale price.
Okay, Larry, what do you make of this investment into Figure AI?
So they're going to need every dollar of the 675 million they've raised. I think they've raised too much too quickly. I think they'll spend a lot of it unnecessarily or less productively than they should. So I remain skeptical, and I like Brad's numbers, but I think it's going to take longer to get there and more money to get there. And that's how I think about it. And the adeptness that they're going to need. And so that between now, the 10 and 12%, and getting to the 40 and 50% is going to be relatively quick. But getting from the 40 or 50% to the 80% that they're going to need is going to be very, very, very tough. And it's going to take much longer than people imagine.
No
Video's
hands mode.
easy.
No hands mode.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, video is easy, guys. Video, you can make things look really good on video.
So Carbon, there's a robot called Carbon. I'll have to find this tweet. That one actually did a sort at 1 times human speed, but this is a robot, I think, that was stationary, wasn't standing on 2 feet. That was pretty impressive how quickly it did it.
Video is easy. You can get a fantastic result in video. Fantastic result. Anyway, that's just how I feel.
It's they're using heuristics for now, and then eventually they go end to end.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
I couldn't hear you.
Okay.
I can now, though.
Okay, good. Good. Trying to figure out some technical issues. At the same time, this is a good time to remind everybody.
1,000 as a recipe for 2 years of wasted time and people's heads getting chopped off. Volkswagen, with their Carry-It program, they hired 5,000 people. They were going to spend up to 30 billion if they made it the whole way to basically be able to unify their software like Tesla did in the car, and it was a huge mess. Now, BYD wouldn't have all the baggage that Volkswagen has. with competing sections of a car, they can be more thoughtful about what's best for the car, but that's a problem.
Yeah,
Just
this
have
was brought up as a sign that they're investing so much in autonomy, but it's actually a great indication of how little they understand about software and software development culture. The Mythical Man Month is a really important classic book, and in it he says, okay, you got one woman who can have a baby in 9 months. So if I hire 9 women, can I have a baby in 1 month? No. What we find in software is that having a really large team actually makes you go slower counterintuitively. Most industries, if you have more people, they can work faster. In software, they work slower because you're trying to figure out what the other guy wrote. There's a lot of communication overhead to develop the software. It's much better to have a small team of really great people. So, yeah, I think they kind of have a long way to go in terms of software. And yeah, Cariad, same exact mistake. Totally blew up, delayed cars for years. Herbert Diess got fired over it.
It's just so funny when people quote 4,000 engineers to me as a proof point of how they're going to win. It just is a proof point of how they don't understand what the problem is. 4,000 engineers are not going to achieve anything. I mean, the leaders in the space today, the top teams in the space today, OpenAI. I don't think OpenAI have 400 people. What you need is thousands and thousands of chips, and you need huge processing power, and you need a hell of a lot of very gifted brain power. You're not going to get brain power from 4,000 people that you won't get from 200 people. The problem with 4,000 people is that 4,000 people have to somehow communicate with each other. That means that the amount of time spent communicating is enormous. Compare that to 40 people communicating with each other. Even through multiple layers, you only need 2 or 3 layers. You're really interfacing with 5 or 6 people at a time. And so even if you have 4 layers or 5 layers, you get, you only need 3 layers to communicate through 10 people at a time to communicate with 50 people. With 4,000 people, you need 20 layers communicating across 200 people. It's impossible. So why you would hire 4,000 engineers to build autonomy just boggles my mind. Tesla are building a brand new robot with brand new technology and brand new everything with 250 people. 250 people. I mean, that's one of the biggest projects they've ever tackled at one time. Somebody said earlier that Tesla did this amazing job of building an EV car for the first time, and it was because Tesla was because Elon Musk was on the factory floor. No. Tesla did this amazing job of building an EV against all odds from the beginning because they were a small team of 40 people, ultimately grew to 400 people, and then it ultimately grew from there. And that it grew in order to actually, build the cars and actually sell the cars and distribute the cars. But the original team was tiny, and they affected this great revolution. So people who quote big numbers to me about R&D and about big numbers of people at R&D as proof points, all they're telling me is, I don't get it. I don't understand it. And so, when you get BYD investing in breaking down Tesla cars, investing in injection, in molding, in die-cast machines, investing in the exact production methods of Tesla, that tells you that BYD's R&D department are the 300, 400, 500 people sitting at Tesla doing that development. And then finally, I'll add this. One of the most powerful elements of Tesla's R&D is that every single person in Tesla participates in R&D. That is the nature of today's startups in technology. In my company, we had a couple of hundred people. How did those people interact with each other? Every single person was their own researcher, and every single person had the right to actually make modifications and variations and build on what they had learned from the other guy. And so that's the nature of R&D. The nature of R&D is, an inquiring mind and somebody who is actually empowered to make those changes. That's what differentiates Tesla. And so, I heard all these arguments about why BYD was going to succeed, and they will succeed. They're a great company. But, to tell me that because they're hiring 4,000 engineers to build autonomy, or that they have got all these plants that they're going to build all over the world, all of that doesn't really, convince me. Anyway, that's my view.
Yeah, it's kind of like if someone said, I'm going to write a movie really fast by hiring 4,000 writers and they're all going to write one page of the screenplay. A
Right.
computer program's an idea. It needs to make sense together. It needs to be designed to interface between different parts of the program. It really helps when you have it inside one brain rather than the guy at the end trying to communicate with the guy who's writing the beginning and saying, hey, so what's our character going to be called? What happens at the beginning? So, yeah, I think that's kind of a good way to think about it. And they are very good at manufacturing, but their software prowess, I mean, it just hasn't really been demonstrated yet. If you look at the software they're shipping on their cars, it's kind of just like, I think, some vanilla Android UI or something.
All right. We covered BYD, maybe a new topic. Larry, do you have any comments on the $6 billion request by the lawyers to get paid in stock? What do you make of the fact that they're asking for stock instead of $6 billion cash?
Well, it's kind of what I expected. I wrote $5 billion some weeks ago. Now they're asking for $6 billion. It's really upsetting what the decision this judge came to. Look, I am unapologetically calling her corrupt. Unapologetically. I know a lot of people want to write her very nice letters and ask very nicely to, consider the $6 billion in shares and so on. But I think she's corrupt. Look, she worked for a law firm, the head of which is now the governor of the state, very close to the president. The president's attitude to Tesla is well known. I think this is a corrupt situation where a judge does not recuse themselves because of this relationship. And amazingly enough, the judgment is all about a personal relationship between Elon and the board, and yet she has the same undisclosed personal relationship. And so it is to get back to the judgment itself, I knew the relationship between Tesla and the board. I don't believe there's a single shareholder who wasn't aware of it. I'm surprised. I would be surprised if there were a lot of shareholders who were not aware of it. We were very happy with the relationship. We were very happy with the board. We voted 81% in favor of it. She says we weren't aware of how close they really were, and she actually said the chairman of the company was beholden to Elon because the company had made her so much money. I mean, that's striking at the very heart of Western capitalism. So I am still, butthurt about this whole judgment. So asking me about what I think about giving the lawyers $6 billion, which they were going to get any case, I'm not a happy camper on the subject. So I'll pass.
Thank you. Bradford?
Well, if I was to not talk about it, what I would say is that it's strange that the judge said in their decision basically what the lawyers should charge for this. Maybe that's customary, but that seems strange. And then they happen to ask for 15%. So that was the number that the judge suggested at the end of their decision, which is really bizarre. I'm going to be writing a letter to the judge during this period where they're able to take letters. You can find information about the letter writing from @Tesla Boomer Mama, and ask that people be respectful when they send in their letters. So right now the court is like taking opinion on the proposed judgment. I think. So this is a special opportunity, and I'm going to write a letter, and I'm going to talk about how thankful I am for this pay package, that it helped my life be better. I think it's helped the lives of many people in this audience. So I'm on this long road trip, but I'm going to set aside some time to do this.
All right, thank you. This space has been going on for about 90 minutes. And any questions, comments, any questions for the speaker board? Any comments on any of the topics that we discussed today? You're welcome to request to speak. Otherwise, we're going to end the space in a few minutes. Larry, did you have anything to add to that?
No, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Yaman.
Thank you for swinging by. I appreciate that. Omar, any final thoughts?
No.
All right. As a reminder, the space is free and open to everybody because of the...
Hey. I got some final thoughts here, Yaman. I apologize. V12 is legit. I am extremely impressed by it. Pretty soon we're going to get out of California and test it in other cities and states. But I am extremely impressed by the amount of progress it's made. I'm going to be testing out in my area and inviting people to, test it out in theirs as we go by. So anyhow, thanks for letting me share the stage with you, Yaman.
All right. Thank you, Bradford. Thank you, Larry. And thank you, Omar. I think we covered it all today. We covered a lot of topics today, for sure. Trying to see if we missed anything. Kevin Melnick is reporting that the new Model 3 efficiency is crazy. He says 200 watt-hours per mile after 70 to 80 miles per hour highway run is nuts, he says. So he's very impressed with his new Model 3. Dr. Joe Borelli mentioned that it is 30% more efficient than BYD. We talked a little bit about NVIDIA. We talked about the sales reports coming out of automakers for February. We talked about the $6 billion fee that the lawyers are requesting. We talked about the incentives that Tesla is offering for March. We talked about Tesla China energy storage plant starting construction. And we talked about V12 Q1 deliveries and the shipments out of China that came out. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Otherwise, we're going to end this space. Larry is coming back up. Let's see what he has to say. Larry, did you have anything to add? Omar, do you see Larry as a speaker?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think he's able to speak right now. All right, listen. One day these bugs will be worked out, and I'm going to be a happy man at that point. All right, thank you very much, everybody. And we will talk to you tomorrow, 2 o'clock Central Time. Until then, take care.